We like to have it be about us every once in a while, but in the big scheme of things, it's not about us. It's from God, it returns to God. So we're going to enter into this thing called Lent. Right? Everybody knows what Lent is, the time of Lent, the season of Lent. Is there anybody here that doesn't understand what Lent is? What happens at the end of Lent?
Easter.
Easter? Yeah. What happens 2 days before Easter?
Good Friday.
Right? What happens on Good Friday?
Easter.
Yep. Right? And so, but some of the things that we do to prepare for Easter, right? So we train, right? Maybe we train a little bit, maybe we give things up, maybe we do certain things. So based on your limited knowledge, or maybe your detailed knowledge of what Lent is about, I want you to take the pencil, step 1. I want you to apply it to the paper, step 2. And I want you just, I'm not going to collect these, right? But I do want you to kind of write this down, maybe take it with you. If it ends up on the floor of your parents' car, so be it. If it ends up in your room, that's even better, right? But maybe you'll do something. What are things that you can do during Lent to prepare yourself, right? To kind of cleanse yourself, maybe to change yourself a little bit. So take 1 minute and just write down maybe 3 things that you can do. Don't look for anybody else to cheat off of either. This should be your own. A few more of you. Take a couple seconds. Ladies, the guys are having a much harder time of it than you did. Just saying. Does it mean that you're better than they are? Maybe holier than they are? And there's just, don't put that away. We may reference it. Anyway, all right. You can keep writing if you need to, but again, why we sacrifice during Lent, and why is it here? Go ahead. Yeah, right. So let me ask you another question. So I told you to keep these, right? I don't want to see them. If you want to talk about them later, that's fine. But they're yours. Should you be sharing your sacrifices with others? Like, should you show that list and maybe 2 weeks in complain about how hard it is or whatever the case may be? No? Why not? It's a tough one. Should we be complaining about our sacrifices during Lent? Someone let out a little secret, I'm going to complain, right? Probably just to my wife, but I'm going to complain because I give up. I know it sounds lame, right? But see, obviously I am not a skinny little thing, right? And I got this because I love chocolate. Anything chocolate. Chocolate cake, chocolate cookies, just chocolate, right? Lots of Dove dark chocolate. I just can't stop. My wife, we were here last night, right? So while we were here, my wife was out and she stopped at Brewster's, and if you've never had the chocolate raspberry truffle ice cream, like, it is unbelievable. And she said, "Oh, I got you a little surprise, here." So of course, I opened up and it was just like a pint, and I'm going to eat just a couple spoonfuls, right? So I put it away, and we sat down. We were binge watching something on Netflix, right? So I thought, okay, put it away. Yeah. I got up to get something to drink and went back in and opened up the container again and ate a couple more, right? And then I went back and sat down and we were watching things again. And then I kind of fell asleep on the sofa. But then I woke up, right, because my wife was laughing at what what she was watching, and I thought, oh, I should eat a little bit more of that. So instead, and you know exactly what I'm doing here, which is cracking me up. So instead of just going back to the freezer and taking a few more spoonfuls, I thought, the heck with it, and just took the rest of the pint, and within the next 10 minutes, the entire thing was gone. It's a problem. So am I going to complain sometime during Lent about not being able to have anything chocolate? Probably, because see, the other people in my house, my son's also a chocoholic, but he'll still be eating it. And that's part of it, right? That's part of our sacrifice, part of our training is being able to withstand all of this stuff. Some of you may be in a sport or an activity where you have to practice a lot. Connor, think about your sisters in dance, right? So maybe they're dancing all the time. They're thinking, Connor's not having to do all this practice. I am, right? Whatever. But it's something that you choose, right? It's something that you choose to do, something that you choose to be. So that's what Lent is about. I think for us it's hard. It's hard. We live in an area. Holly, I keep walking. I'm sorry. See, what she does know is if I stand up and start walking, I'm going off script, which is probably a problem for later on when we have to edit this. But anyway, but I want it, right? I got it. I want it. I got it. This is our life for all except 40 days a year, probably. And I can't imagine that any of us, that we're all from this area. Even the poorest of us probably do not want for anything or much, right? I want it, I got it. I want it, I got it. And we all have various stages of how we make that happen. And I was thinking about it. I was thinking about this one slide. Should this be here? Is it even relevant? But I think that it is, because we don't want for anything. All of you. Maybe your mom or dad says, no, Joel, you can't have that, right? No, Reese, you can't have that. But somewhere along the line, you know how to get in there and get that thing. Right? So we don't really want for anything. I was putting on these shoes this morning. Jackie's in the back. She's going to start laughing here momentarily. I'm sure of it. So I have this thing for tennis shoes. Right? And I probably have about a dozen pair in my closet. And my wife will say to me, you bought another pair? Well, hon, you've got like 87 pair of shoes in there, so don't tell me I can't have more tennis shoes, right? But I wanted these shoes. Right? And they were way too much money, and on the website they were just unbelievable. I'm like, no, right? And I spent a ton of time looking everywhere for these shoes until I got them for a price where I thought, okay, my wife's not going to kill me, and maybe it's worth buying. I'm telling you this story for a reason later on. But I spent a heck of a lot of time searching until I could get these shoes for the price that I wanted, right? And I love them. And the other 5 pair that are at home, I love them too, but right now I love these more. And see, what's going to happen is I'm going to find another pair in 6 months I'm going to like more than these, and this will be relegated to the other 6. Now there'll be 7 pair, and my wife's going to say, are you going to give a pair away to anybody sometime soon? Because really it's backing up. But it's a problem. But again, I want it. One way or another, I got it. Right? And I think we can all relate to that. Now, and as I said, and I probably did spend a significant amount of time looking at different websites, and Googling, just prices to see when I could get them for the price that I wanted. Now, so let's talk about the different things, and this is going to relate back to these shoes, right? So we think about fasting as giving something up. We should think of fasting more like training, but so fasting, giving something up. How much time did I spend looking for these shoes? And what could I have been doing with that time that may have been more useful, whether it be putting together edge nights for you so they're a little more entertaining than maybe that they are, right? Thinking about this, right? Maybe doing something with my family, whatever the case may be. But we think of it as giving something up, but I would tell you that it's more like training. And it means sacrifice as well as added effort. I know that. So whatever's on your list, if there's anything on your list, it might be a sacrifice, but in the end, does that sacrifice not eating the entire pint of chocolate, raspberry, truffle ice cream? Does it require a little more restraint? Does it require added effort on my part? Yes. Corinthians 1. Do you not know that the runners in the stadium all run in the race, but only one wins the prize? So run as if to win. Every athlete exercises discipline in every way. They do it to win a perishable crown, but we an imperishable one. Thus, I do not run aimlessly. I do not fight as if I were shadow boxing. No, I drive my body and train it for fear that after having preached to others, I myself could be disqualified. So whatever's on that list, if you take any single one of those things during Lent and you do something with it, okay, so I just have to ask, is Christine going to do like a whole Lenten like family night where you all come together and talk about what you're giving up, and maybe she pushes you guys a little bit harder? I love when she does this stuff. You know that, right? And I know you bear it grudgingly, but you bear with it, right? But any of the stuff that's on your list, it's not for a perishable crown, right? Has anybody ever won any kind of medal or maybe anything for a sport that they did better than anybody else? Right? But is that a forever thing? No, because what happens? Next year there's a whole nother and somebody else could win. Right? Anybody else? Right? But is it forever? No. Because somebody else is going to come along and try and beat what you did. You know, the Guinness Book of World Records, is any record ever forever? No, because somebody's always going to try and get the next better one. Right? So are we racing for a perishable crown? No, we are racing for one that's imperishable, right? One that is eternal. So we remember that there's a crucifixion on Good Friday, when there's a resurrection on Easter. And it's because of that crucifixion and resurrection, because God sacrificed ultimately everything to get us a path to heaven, and that's not perishable. Everything that we do to give back to God, right, whether it be sacrifice or doing for others, gets us closer to that goal. St. Augustine says, fasting cleanses the soul. It raises the mind, subjects one's flesh to the spirit, renders the heart contrite and humble, scatters the clouds of concupiscence, quenches the fire of lust, and kindles the true life of chastity. Enter again into yourself. Right? So this is from St. Augustine. St. Augustine was one of the world's biggest sinners ever. Trust me, ever. Like, I'm not so sure there's a commandment he did not break, to be honest with you. Look him up. He broke them all, right? Repeatedly. But in the end, realize, well, this is not really a good way to lead life. And we talked last night about, your heart closing, maybe your heart opening. Well, his heart was open at that point, right? And he was able and willing to receive something more, something different, and Christ entered. Right, so entering it into yourself. So during this time, when you're training for something, part of that training is a head game with yourself, is it not? Am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? Am I going to be better than everybody else? Am I going to get there? I really don't want to. I don't want to do this today. And isn't it harder to train for anything when we're doing it from home because we can't, well, we can now, right, in some cases, but be with other people to train? So there's no motivation. So you're sitting there, at home thinking, I don't want to do this today. But if we don't, do we win that prize again? Do you win that medal again? Right? Does your team win again? Probably not, right? Because you're not practicing. So you enter into yourself. You say to yourself, you look in the mirror and you say, okay, get up off your butt. You got to do this. Right? So it's the same for Lent, right? Enter into yourself. So those sacrifices, whatever they are, enter into yourself. Why am I doing this? Is it worth my time? Is it worth my effort? And in the end, for one reason or another, it probably is. How will this bring you closer to Jesus? This is an old meme, but, right, like on Twitter. I mean, so there are, we talked about that too, right? Those people that follow Nicki Minaj or Harry Styles, or Ed Sheeran, right, whoever else. Right, but you can also follow on social media. You can follow a lot of things that are about your faith, right? Because I follow a lot of what you all follow to see what's going on out on social media. But I also follow a lot of things that bring me maybe a little more life, right? That feed me spiritually, because that's what I need. Right? So yes, can it bring you closer to Christ? Probably, right? But how will this bring you closer? How will your sacrifice bring you closer to Christ? There's something called redemptive suffering, right? So a little bit of suffering brings you a lot of grace, and that's kind of what fasting is. You're going to give something up for a while, but in the end, the graces that come from that will be more than what it took you to fast. Now, do I want you to stop eating for 40 days? No, because you'll probably die, right? And that would not be a good thing. And I don't need Andy calling me and saying, hey, Don, Elle's at home on her deathbed because you told her she can't eat for 40 days, right? So I don't want that to happen. But that sacrifice, that little things you give up, not driving by Brewster's for the next 40 days and not eating chocolate raspberries. See, I'm looking at your eyes and you get it. That is the best thing I've ever eaten, I swear to God. But that's a sacrifice. How many people love Chick-fil-A? Riding by Chick-fil-A for 40 days and not being able to have Chick-fil-A? Ouch. Right? How bad is Taco Bell for us, right? But there's often times that I can pull into Taco Bell and get one taco really quick and devour before I get home, and nobody knows, right? You wonder how I got like this. See, now you know, right? And because I don't train anymore, no, I'm not going to run 8 miles today. No, I'm just going to eat this taco instead. But what are we sacrificing? I'm giving you all my secrets about how I don't sacrifice. I'm going to show you a quick video. Maybe. And guys, we decided the first line belongs to you.
Hi, my name is Father Mike Smith, and this is Essential Prayer. I'm giving up being stupid for Lent.
There it is. That's for you all, guys.
Hi, my name is Father Mike Smith, and this is Essential Presents. Let's talk about Lent. When it comes to Lent, we have to do something, we have to give up something for Lent. Obviously, we all have this. But one of the things that we typically can do, we can fall into the trap of either seeing Lent as this is the time I really just challenge myself, try to do something impossible, not because it's a good thing for me to do, but just kind of I wonder if I can do something difficult. Or we do the opposite. We do something so minimal that it actually makes no difference in our life and we hardly even noticed it. I once knew a woman who would give up eating watermelon for Lent. In Minnesota, in the wintertime. She may or may not have been one of my sisters. Or we do the whole the twofer thing, I guess I've been meaning to lose some weight anyways, and if I gave up snacking, then maybe I get, 2 for 1 kind of a thing. No, that's not bad, but it misses the point. The point of Lent is what? Well, where's the origin of Lent? Back in the day, almost 2,000 years ago, almost, a couple centuries shy, people coming into the church, it was a long process. And the last little stretch of time in that coming into the church was a season called the season of purification and enlightenment. The whole idea was this: okay, what's still in my life that can't be in my life if I'm going to follow after Jesus? So I need to be purified of that. The second thing, enlightenment, is what are the ways in which I need to take steps to follow after Jesus, to get closer to Him, and to start conforming my life to His? How can I let God use this time in me to make me the person He wants me to be? How do I be a saint? So, you can realize this. Okay, so giving up some M&Ms might not make me a saint. What will? Jesus would often talk about these 3 areas: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. My invitation to you is pick one thing in these 3 areas: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, and do that thing. But when you do it, be really intentional. So when it comes to prayer, okay, what's one kind of way in which you can develop your relationship with Jesus through prayer this Lent? So sometimes, again, people say, well, I'm going to pray 12 rosaries a day. Why? Because it's really tough and I think I'd probably grow. Well, if you think that is actually what God's calling you to, then fantastic. Maybe go ahead and try that. I like to just take time aside and have just 15 minutes, not forever, but just 15 minutes of reading the Gospels. Or I'll listen to them, and I'll listen to the audio Bible, whatever. And just listen to the Gospels and just kind of sit with Jesus and walk with Him through the Gospels. I'll press pause or I'll stop reading and just kind of pray and sit with Jesus. Those 15 minutes are so helpful. They're not deal breakers in the sense that they're not so difficult, but they are incredibly helpful because I know that they get me closer to Jesus. So what's one prayer thing you could do that would actually help you get closer to Jesus? Second thing, fasting. Now keeping in mind that the church only asks us to actually fast on 2 days: Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent, and Good Friday, the day after the end of Lent, or the first day of the Triduum, Good Friday, and Ash Wednesday. And that fast also, you've probably heard about this. It's 2 small meals and 1 regular sized meal. It's not bigger than both 2 small meals combined, whatever. It's not really a fast. it's funny because, I mean, the fasting isn't about how hard it is. It's about how does it conform our hearts to Jesus. So what kind of fast do you need to have in your life? Your fast doesn't have to have anything to do with food. Maybe you'd say, well, I want to fast from social media. Or I want to fast from, something even more particular, from checking my phone all the time. I want to fast from texting. I mean, I imagine if you're living with someone, if you're living with your family, if you have some friends, one of the things that they probably notice is how often you are on your phone. Maybe a fantastic thing to do for you during Lent is to say, I'm going to fast from that. I'm only going to check my phone maybe whatever the thing is. You set it up for yourself. But what's something that you could get out of your life that will purify your life? I know so many of my college students, and not just our college students, but college students, or just people, young adults, who their go-to, I'm not doing anything, Netflix. I'm supposed to be doing something, Netflix. Maybe, if you say, I need to purify my life from some things that are keeping me from the Lord, and Netflix is, or Facebook, or Twitter, or Instagram, whatever the thing is, it's keeping me from being present. So maybe that's something you need to fast from. So prayer, fasting. Third thing, almsgiving. And the first two are kind of about you. So what do I need to be purified from? How do I need to get closer to the Lord? Almsgiving is all about how can I allow this time, how can I let God use me during this time to bless others. Now, could actually be, okay, who am I going to give money to? Could be about money. But I know other people who will say this. They'll say, I'm going to give time. How do you give time? You can volunteer, of course, but that's not an everyday kind of thing. I know some people who have taken Lent, and what they've done is they've decided that for every day during Lent, they're going to write a small note, short note of encouragement, or short note of gratitude to people in their lives who they're thankful for. And so at the beginning of Lent, they write down 40 names, so it's already decided, and then each day, sit down, here's a note, write it to the person, send it in the mail, send it off. And that kind of thing is just like I'm taking time to bless someone else. So it's basically an almsgiving kind of thing. Now, you might decide that you actually want to give money. So a great thing to do is to do that consistently throughout the entire season of Lent. One of the most common things that we have, of course, in our churches is we have Catholic relief services, and so you have those Operation Rice Bowl, the cardboard thing, you pop it into a box, and it's really cool, it sits on the countertop. No, that's great, but here's the thing. We have to do it like Jesus would do it. So would Jesus throw his leftover pennies that he didn't even want in Operation Rice Bowl and be like, hey, I'm a good person, I'm Jesus. That's my voice for Jesus, apparently. I'm a good person. I put some pennies into a box. What is that? Let's be intentional about this. At the end of Lent, when you open up your Operation Rice Bowl, you should only see silver and green and white, like green dollars, right? Because of this. Because how life transforming for yourself is it by just throwing what's left over? Secondly, we're actually called to be Christians. We're called to not just give from our surplus, we're actually called to give from our need. We're actually called to give from our substance, not just our surplus. So, this Lent, what's one thing you're going to do in the area of prayer that will actually help you get closer to the Lord? One thing in the area of fasting that will actually purify, so get some things out of your life that you just don't need. And what's one thing in your life, one way that this Lent you're going to be giving alms, or giving back, or offering to other people. Now here's the last thing. When it comes to what you're doing for Lent, should you ever tell anyone? And of course, the first reading of the first day of Lent, Ash Wednesday, is always about don't your left hand know what your right hand is doing, and keep your secret, your holy deeds private, that kind of thing, which is awesome because that's what Jesus said. But here's my thing: I think people get a little too preoccupied, a little too sensitive about well, I don't want to tell people what I'm doing for Lent because I don't want to get a big head. I don't want to be prideful. Now, here's the thing: you might be like the most hardcore Catholic on your block in your neighborhood, and so yeah, I'm giving up beer for Lent. Whoa, dude, you're hardcore. But if you realize that there are saints throughout the history of the church who literally gave up food for Lent, the entire season of Lent. I'm not saying that's a good thing to do.
Don't do that.
But I'm just saying that I'm giving up coffee isn't as hardcore as I think it is. And so if I think, I don't want to get prideful or get a big head, you won't. It's actually a bit more humbling to say, what are you doing for Lent? Well, I'm praying 15 minutes every night. Oh, thank you, Father. That's really intense. Well, no, it doesn't have to be intense. I know that it helps. So for you, sometimes if someone asks what you're doing for Lent, don't worry about being prideful. It's probably not that big of a deal. From all of us here at Center Presents, my name is Father Mike. God bless.
think I like him because he talks faster than I do. Anyway, okay, let's go back to this. So let's talk about Father Mike for just for a minute, right? So my point about not sharing with people is because we tend to complain. So Elle, if you don't eat for 40 days, you're going to be complaining to somebody about, oh, I gave this up, I'm not eating anything, I'm so hungry, right? But to have a conversation with somebody is fine, right? But on the other side of it, especially if you're really competitive, look at me. I gave up chocolate raspberry truffle ice cream, and I made it. You didn't make it. I saw you eating an ice cream sandwich the other day, or whatever. Like that's the wrong way too. To have a conversation is different, right? So we're going to talk about the other two too, about almsgiving and about prayer. So again, so the goal of everything we do is to go closer to Christ. So I think the other part of this, like if you're gonna say, Emma, that I'm going to train twice as hard because it's Lent, right? Because in the end, you think that maybe if you train twice as hard, you'll also be twice as good as you were before. That's the wrong reason, right? If I give up that ice cream simply so maybe I can lose 5 pounds, it's the wrong reason to give it up because there's an ulterior motive, right? So the idea behind this is the goal of everything we do is to go closer to Christ, period. So do I give up the chocolate, raspberry, truffle ice cream to get closer to Christ? Do I not buy a pair of tennis shoes for all of Lent just because I don't think Christ is going to care how many pair of tennis shoes I have, right? But he's going to be mad if I buy an extra pair. But no, that's not the reason why. Does it make sense to give up swearing only for the season of Lent? A lot of people do that. A lot of young people do that. I remember being your age and maybe a little bit older, and that was like a big deal. You know, kids are in college, right? And I'm not going to drink for the entire month or for the season of Lent. But man, the day after Easter, we're having one heck of a party, right? No. Giving up something unhealthy, does that lead you closer to Christ? You know, Father Mike said his neighbor's going to give up beer. Does it lead you closer to Christ? I don't know. Is it a sin if you gave up M&Ms for Lent and you break your fast? Is it a sin if you gave up something for Lent and you break it? Anybody know? No. Why is it not a sin?
Because we're not perfect.
We're not perfect, yeah. And there's also not a commandment that says that thou shalt not do something for 40 days during Lent, right? There just isn't. But it's a way for us to take maybe an extra step to get closer to Christ. The other thing that Father Mike talked about, right, is prayer. Are we too busy to pray? So I'm going to go back to the story about the tennis shoes because this is where it comes into play. So how many times a day, because I looked for these for 6 months, just so you know, I know how long I looked for them. So how many times per day did I go out there to see if anybody put them on sale and how low that was and did they have my size? If I simply took those maybe 10 minutes per day, maybe sometimes a half an hour if I'm sitting there watching blind or aimlessly something on TV and I'm looking on my phone for them, right? Could I offer that time up in prayer? Was I too busy doing this to pray? Probably not. Does it have to be long? No. St. Francis de Sales, I love this quote. Every Christian needs a half an hour of prayer each day except when he's busy and then he needs an hour. Why do you need more because you're busy? Is that a perplexing question? I don't know, right? Because if you're busy, chances are you're spending even less time paying attention to your relationship with Christ, right? You could take it down to your home life. If you're really busy, you're probably paying less attention to taking care of that relationship with your family, right? With your parents, whatever the case may be. If you're busy, what else are you neglecting? Maybe that homework that you really need to get done to get an A on that test. Right? Whatever the case may be, you know, if you're that busy, you probably need to be more intentional in everything that you're doing. If you're too busy to pray and read your scriptures, are you busier than God ever intended you to be? Probably. Our lives are so full. You know, I think about the last, 11 months now, right? And I think about what my life was like before those 11 months. And I know that you all being younger, right, and with school and activities and sports and whatever, and in confirmation prep, right, you're even busier. But God didn't intend for us to be that busy all the time, right? Just something to think about. You really ought to check in with God at least once per day. And there's something else I wanted to go over. I'll go over that in a minute, right? So how often do you check in with your friends? How often, and I want, seriously, because I would look at Holly and look at myself and think the same thing. How often do you pick this thing up and reach out to somebody? Probably pretty much, right, throughout the day. Yo, what's up, right? I'm famous for Holly, right? I'll give her a Holly in all caps with a question mark. If she answers, I know she's there, right? And we'll have a conversation. If not, then we won't. My daughter was out of town. How often do I pick up and say something to her? How about my friends, right? How about getting ready for youth ministry? How about you all? Think about it, right? How often do we reach out to somebody just to check in? I should never tell this story, but I will. So we do this thing whenever we're not in COVID, where we do service, right? A lot of service. I think a couple of you guys were involved, like helping out at the craft fair and stuff. Drew has, just because he has older siblings that have come through the program, has been dragged along as we've done, feeding the homeless and things like that. And plus, it was one thing that he actually took on himself recently, right? So when we do all of that stuff, right, we're stepping back and we're taking time. We're checking in with God multiple times just based on what the things are that we're doing, right? Think about that. But that's all part of prayer, right? And we take that time, we put it aside, and we're giving back to God. Do you simply, if you play a sport, no. You said you won either a medal or something. There's a good chance. What was it for? Wrestling? So there might be a chance, maybe not, right? So let's just take people in general that are on sports teams, especially football and basketball, right? Maybe before that match started, God, you know what? Just let me win this match, right? How many times do you see somebody score a touchdown, right? And it's either, right, or basketball players when they score a three-pointer, right? And we see that. They're taking that time, right? They're taking that time to give thanks back to God. They're taking, 3 seconds on the end zone of a football field, right? In front of the net at the basketball game, and for the whole world to see. Do I think it's being showy? Probably not. But on the other side, you take time to listen for God's voice. So if you won that wrestling match, and I don't know how or why, right? Because beforehand you said, God, please let me win this match. At the end of that match, if that's what happened, did you thank God for the win? And that's what they're doing on the football field. That's what they're doing on the basketball court. How many times have you gone in to take a test? Oh, God, I'm not prepared for this test. Please help me pass this test. So I'll give you a secret. So I'm in formation to become a deacon someday, maybe, right, if I'm blessed. So we have to take tests, right? We have to read a lot of stuff. And there are many nights when I'm saying, oh, God, I didn't read this week, or I don't understand what they were telling me. Help me do well on this, right? And if you do well on that test, at the end of it, is there a, hey, thank you, right? Because that wasn't me. I don't know. Because oftentimes, we say that, maybe it's just because, right? But when you hear God, when God listens, or when you're listening to Him and He gives you that response, no, I don't know if you did or not, but if you won that wrestling match because you prayed to God beforehand, did you acknowledge the fact that you heard God's voice? If you passed that test, are you acknowledging the fact that I prayed about this beforehand and I heard God's voice, and the fact that He allowed me to pass the test? My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. John 10:27. Pray without ceasing. 1 Thessalonians. Right? So all these quotes, spending time with God puts everything else in perspective. This is the one, pray without ceasing. And you think that means that you've got to be down on your knees. I'm not going to do that, Don. Are you serious? I have to, this would be a shocker for you all, in my daytime job when we're not quarantined, I have to go out and do these training classes, right, to people around the country. I talk for a living. Can you imagine that? Me talking for a living. But anyway, there are a lot of times when I know the group that I'm going to be going in front of, it's like, I really don't want to go to these people. I don't like these people, whatever the case may be, because they're just really, they complain all the time. They're gruff. And I'll tell them, God, do me a favor. Please help me to be able to get through this. I do this with Edge nights some nights when I look at because I can see who's coming now. My biggest fear is, Connor's going to be there. God, please give me the strength to not lose my patience and I can get through to him. Right? I'm kidding. But how often does that happen, right? And at the end of that night, at the end of that training class, right, when I get back to the airport and I'm driving home from Edge on a Saturday night, there's a lot of times and I'll think, okay, that went far better. Connor and I had a great night, right? And he got it. Thanks, God. Right? Or I finished doing one of these training classes, and I'm getting back in the Uber on the way back to the airport or back to my hotel, whatever the case may be, and you sit back and you think, whew, or you win the wrestling match, right? Or whatever it is that you won that award for. You know what? Thanks. That's praying without ceasing. Help me with this. Hey, thanks. Right? Going out at night. Hey, God, going to this think time, not sure how it's going to be. Help me get through this. Praying without ceasing. You leave that thing and you get back in the car on your way home and you know what? That went really much better than I thought. Thank you. Praying without ceasing. Right? It's that easy. And I think we make it hard. The shortest prayer in the world is help. If you're asking him to help you without even saying, God help me, if you just kind of help. He gets it. He gets the message. For all that has been thanks, for all that will be, what is your yes, right? What is your yes? And it's just reaching out to God. The inner life of the Trinity is a constant prayer. Our prayer takes place when we step into the Trinitarian relationship of God. How many times we refer to God? Who refers to God as God? Who talks more to Jesus? Anybody? Or Lord? Right? Probably none of us really call on the Holy Spirit very much, do we? You'll hear me call on the Holy Spirit before an Edge night when we're saying grace at the beginning or whatever. But how often do we do that? Probably not a lot, right? But if we step into the Trinitarian relationship of God and we rely on any one of the three in one, it should help us. This is the quote I was looking for. Pray as if everything depends on God and work as if everything depends on you. St. Ignatius of Loyola, right? So think about those basketball players, those football players. Right? Maybe they're who's going to win the Super Bowl today?
Kansas City Chiefs.
Kansas City? Did you say Tampa? No, Kansas City? Right? So, if Tom Brady wins, does Tom Brady deserve it?
Yeah, he's a good athlete.
Do we really? As much as I hate New England,
He's a good
right?
athlete, but I just don't like him like that.
So you don't have to like him, right? And I think there's a lot of reasons why people don't like him. But it's hard to say that he's probably not the greatest quarterback of all time. It's hard to say that he's not. New England, right? And we're looking, right? We're looking at Patrick Mahomes. We're looking at the future. And we're excited about that. And he seems to be a much different person, a much better person. So what my point is, if Tom Brady, God, I'm passing judgment here and I shouldn't be, right? If Tom Brady works like everything depends on him and doesn't realize that all that talent came from God, yeah, you deserve to lose, Tom. One of my favorite athletes right now is Steph Curry. Maybe you like him, maybe you don't, right? I'm not a huge basketball fan, but Steph Curry gets it, right? And he knows that he wasn't the top of the draft heap, right? And there were many people that looked at him that said, mediocre player, a lot of spunk, I don't know, right? And look where he is. But he works as if it all depends on him, and he knows that it all depends on his relationship with God, and he'll share that with you readily. What do? So the other thing out there is called almsgiving, right? Almsgiving is doing something. Now, Father Mike touched on this, and I don't know, has anybody ever heard the term almsgiving? It's kind of of an older term. Some of you have, right? So almsgiving, people think it's giving money. Right now, the one thing I would say, I'm going to critique Father Mike Schmitz here. I'm going to go to hell. So Father Mike is saying that it has to be dollars and silver. It can't be pennies. Well, that woman who gave her last 2 pennies as an offertory, when the wealthy were giving, $5, She gave all that she had. So we have to be careful of that, right? So if all you have are some pennies and you put them in that box and you give it, that you gave more than somebody who has a lot and gave a $10 bill. Right? But what are corporal acts of mercy? Do something. Feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, shelter the homeless, clothe the naked, visit the sick, visit the imprisoned, and bury the dead. Feed the hungry. I don't think any of us are probably going hungry, right? But I know a lot of you, in one way or another, have taken part in events where you have fed the hungry. It's a selfless act. Right? And it's about being selfless. Give drink to the thirsty, the same thing, right? If we're helping those homeless people out with food, we're probably giving them drink also. Shelter the homeless. Maybe we don't have the money to be able to rent apartments and buy people homes, right? But if we're able to go and maybe work at a shelter, right? Or maybe we have the means to give something to a shelter, right? We're sheltering the homeless in that way, clothing the naked. We did a food drive recently, and we asked also for socks. If anybody drove by and dropped off some food to Drew and I when we were standing up front, a lot of people were giving us socks too. Right? Because you see the Bombas commercials on TV, the number one thing asked for by homeless people are socks, right? And it is. Clothing the homeless, or clothing the naked, right? Visiting the sick. How many of you ever had a sick relative and you've gone to visit them pre-COVID? Right? Just spending time, right? Just spending time. Hey, I'm here with you. I'm here for you. And hopefully as you're visiting those sick, you're also praying for those sick, right? God, please heal them. Or if it's something that's terminal, God, please take away their pain, right? Because it's almost one of those things where if we have somebody who's dying and it's really kind of a painful, ugly death, we may pray, God, please take them. Right? But either way, we're taking care of the sick. Visit the imprisoned. I don't know how many people are going to do that, right? Bury the dead, making sure that when somebody does pass, that maybe we celebrate their death, right? But we also give them, a respectful burial. Spiritual acts of mercy. These are harder. Because these are what I've been asking you all to do for the longest time. Forgive offenses. Any one of you, right? I always pick on those of you I know the best, right? So I should stop calling on people that I know better than some of the others. But any one of you, think about that person that just angered you today. How many of you have siblings? How many of you were mad at one of your siblings in the last 24 hours? I have one, and I was mad at her in the last 24 hours. Right? Forgive offenses. Do you want to forgive them for whatever it is they did to you? And even if they were wrong, is it a bad thing to forgive them? No, I forgive you. Dylan, I can't forgive you. Maybe. I'll have to think about it, right? But think of those two sentences right there. Maybe what Noah did was worse than what Dylan did, right? So why can't I forgive him? Comfort the afflicted, right? So maybe somebody who's not quite what you are, right? And I'm going to take this even to school. Somebody's new at school, right? Maybe somebody is a little awkward at school. Do you comfort them or do you add to their pain and their suffering? Which one do you do? Bear wrongs patiently, right? So somebody is acting out against you. Are you patient enough to accept it, right? And to overlook it? Instruct the ignorant. Right? Ignorant can be an ugly word, but a lot of times ignorant just means something they don't know what they don't know. So instructing them, right, helping educate somebody on something they don't know or understand, and especially about the faith, right? Counsel the doubtful. So if I look at Holly and Jackie back there doing her homework, and and myself, people will come to us and ask us questions about the faith, right? Because they see us as somebody who might know. Maybe a little something. Emma shows up at my front door and asks me for $20 to cut or to shovel my walk, and then asks me a faith question. Do I have to answer? Probably not. But right? Counsel the doubtful because she's not understanding something. Admonish sinners. Every single person in this room right now is a sinner. All of us. Love the sinner. Hate the sin, but love the sinner. And pray for the living and the dead. These are harder. These are easy. Go feed the homeless, Mission from Mars, right? I'm going to drop off, drinks and food to Don, he can take it down to Light of Life mission. Shelter the homeless, right? Saying I'm going to give all this stuff so that we can help those people that we're putting into public housing, whatever the case may be. I'm going to offer up socks, right? Those are easy things. Those are easy tasks. But this requires more of you personally. Forgive offenses. My sister really angered me yesterday, right? And the things that happened when you're our age is different probably than when you're your age. But she really did. And it took everything in my power to not just rip her to shreds. But in the end, I walked away from it and thought, you know what? She's seeing it from her perspective, right? But that takes a lot. Did I want to quit being mad at her? No. I wanted to be mad at her. Comfort the afflicted, right? Did I go out of my way to treat that person better than what they appear to be being treated by somebody else? Because if I didn't, I'm just as bad as the other person, right? Bear wrongs patiently. Drew did me wrong. He threw his burger at me last night at dinner, right? But I forgave him for that. Right? Instructing the ignorant, right? This is all things that take your personal time and require you to be nice to somebody else, right? To be as Christ was on this earth. You are the hands and feet, right? St. Teresa of Avila. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. No hands, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes with which Christ looks out to his Sorry, I've been talking too long. Yours are the eyes with which Christ looks out his compassion to the world. Yours are the feet with which he will go about doing good. Yours are the hands with which he is to bless us now, right? So you are the hands and feet. When I talk to you at Edge Nights about being like Christ was on this earth, he gave you a roadmap of how to act towards others, right? Just something to think about. Build your faith by serving the Lord. When the Son of Man comes in glory, all the angels with him, he will sit upon his glorious throne, and all the nations will be assembled before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from his goats. He will place the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. See which one of these sides you fit into. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. A stranger, and you welcomed me. Naked, and you clothed me. Ill, and you cared for me. In prison, and you visited me." And then the righteous will answer and say to him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and visit you?" And the king will say to them in reply, "Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of the least of my brothers, you did for me." That's hard, isn't it? Especially when it requires us to maybe be a certain way when we really don't want to. Just a couple more things. So am I my brother's keeper? Cain asked, am I really my brother's keeper? Yes, we are all responsible for everybody else. So your brother or your sister is not some of those people that you live with. And I'm pretty sure that Nate's a pet anyway, right? That's what I thought. Again, amen, I say to you, what you did not do for one of these to these, you did not do for me. So confirm for Christ. This is all about preparing for confirmation, right? Preparing our heart and preparing our person. So confirmation is a gift. Remember that. I'm going to say this to you a couple more times between now and next year, and your parents are going to cringe. Your response is either yes or no. Not your parents' response. Your response is either yes or no. Now, I say that to you, and I fully expect to see all of you up in that church, in front of that altar, getting confirmed in 2 years. If I have to come drag you out of your house, I will. Right? But it's your responsibility. It's not your parents. You all are young adults. And your answer is not just of that moment of confirmation, but throughout your whole life, because you keep confirming, reaffirming who you are as a son or daughter of God as you live your life. I say it all the time. If you see me up here, or Holly back there, or Jackie when she's in small group with you all, There's like a little club back here of these certain girls and Jackie, right? It's kind of disgusting, but you know, right? But if you saw me somewhere else, or Holly or Jackie, and we were not what we portray to be here, your answer is not just at that moment, but throughout your whole life. Would you think of any one of us quite differently? Probably, right? Well, I have destroyed any respect that you might have for me or Jackie or Holly if we're not who we profess to be when we're here. But throughout our entire life, we have to keep being that person. Are you ready to let the Spirit lead you? That's a tough question when you're your age. Because right now, your parents lead you in a lot of things, right? Some of those friend groups lead you in a lot of things. But are you ready to let the Spirit lead you? Will you live each day as a disciple of Christ? Another hard thing, especially at your age. So the idea with this whole Lenten thing is to spend the season focusing on prayer, focusing on some sort of fasting, maybe some sort of almsgiving. If you go to the neighbor's house, right, if you live next to an older neighbor and just take their trash out for them, that's kind of almsgiving, right? If you came to my, watch this, if you came to my house and just shoveled my sidewalk without asking for money, so I wouldn't let you do that, but that would be almsgiving, right? Think about that. What needs to change in my life to be a better disciple of Christ? So what kind of person are you? And I'm going to say this on tape. Take your faith out of it for a minute. I don't want you to do that. But just in general, what type of person are you? Are you one that tries to do for others, right? Are you one that tries to be there and be the bigger person? Or is it all about you all the time? That's part of this journey. Putting us away and doing it for others. We need more of this. You take a quick look at that, right? And a lot less of this. Pride and envy, right? Sin, whether they be mortal or venial. Gluttony, the whole pint of chocolate raspberry truffle ice cream, right? Less of this. So a couple reminders for you as we end this. So I want you to think about a couple things. By June of this year, complete your faith formation commitments for the year. So if you're doing upper room, you're doing it virtually, get those done, right? And get the questions in. Edge nights. So the idea is to attend at least 6 of those, but you can do those virtually as well as live. So I've sent out 4 digital Edge already, right? And you can just watch those, and there's questions attached to those. There's a half dozen of us youth ministers from the North Hills that are doing those. So you can make that happen either way, but you've got to send the answers to those questions back to me to get credit for the digital. Build your faith through service. So Edge plus Faith Builders for a total of 10 activities. We're saying 9 this year. But service can be a lot of different things. A lot of you have turned in service forms, right, for things that you've done for a neighbor or done at home, right? Maybe you've gone out and done some things over the holidays. But you can also just attend Extra Edge, especially with service being so hard this year. Last year we were able to offer over 430 different opportunities for service. Of course, this year we just don't have that because most places are shut down. But so even if you just do Extra Edge, to get closer to that total number. And if you're going to do a service type thing, it really should be something that leads to this, right? So if you're going to do service outside, did you some way or another help another person? Right? If you can't find a way to volunteer, if you're not sure if it counts or not, just reach out to me or Holly. We'll kind of let you know, right? Anyway, 56 minutes. I beat it by 4 minutes, right? So that's what today was all about, right? So it's all about Lent. It's about who you are, right, and who you're going to be when you come out of this Lenten season. Something to think about, and just you can make little changes in your life for the rest of your life and come out the other end as a very different person. I would challenge you with one thing. At the end of this Lenten season, do people see you as think about this. And it's easy to do. Do people see you as a better person or as a worse person than maybe you were a month and a half ago? For your relationships with people that are not part of the Catholic faith, you don't need to tell them what you're doing, right? But do they see a different person in maybe just little ways? When you come out of the Lenten season is when you went into it, right? A couple things to think about. So why don't we pray real quick? I'll get you out of here. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for your sacrifice. As we prepare to go into this Lenten season, as we prepare to sacrifice in small ways, as you did in quite a large way, right? We ask that you be with us. We ask you to send the Holy Spirit to keep us strong, to help us maybe live up to the commitments we make for the Lenten season. As we prepare for the next year and a half to be confirmed, help guide us in the ways that bring us closer to you, and help us to be able to avoid the temptations of this world. Lord, we ask us all in your name. Amen. In the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. All right.
I don't know if you guys are into, oh my gosh, just lost the train of thought there. Podcasts and stuff. Father Mike Schmitz, I don't know if you saw your phone. He's doing the Bible, like the audio Bible. So he's doing like little snippets. So for Lent, if you like, that's what I'm going to try to do. Listen to a podcast either like once a week, once a day, and just get some more Bible things. So he's going through the whole Bible in a year. So if you listen to each one of them, he's pretty cool. Makes it entertaining.
Yeah, I would tell you, and if you can't do that every day, look him up on YouTube, like Father Mike Smith. Okay, ladies, he's not that bad looking, right? So if nothing else, you can look at a good-looking guy, right? Because I know you all do that as you're following all those people on social media, right? But you'll find him to be rather entertaining, gentlemen, right? All the topics he picks, just hit on one, right? And he'll make you laugh, but he'll make you think as you go through it all. Right. So anyway, we are done for today. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your patience. Now get out of here. Go Kansas City. Yeah, if you want to leave your pencils in the back, throw them at Jackie on your way out the door.